I close my eyes and listen. The forest is quiet, but never silent. There's a low hum hidden beneath the rustling of leaves. A rhythm that feels alive. It's the kind of sound you don't notice unless you're very still. Tonight, I want to tell you about this hidden music. The secret life of trees. How they send signals to one another in ways most of us never see. How the forest is not just a collection of trees, but a community that whispers in the dark. I want you to feel safe here, to drift with me through roots and branches as we follow the sleepy signals that travel under the forest floor. Like lullabies written in soil, like starlight woven through wood. So take a slow breath. Let your body soften. We're going to wander together into a world that feels both familiar and otherworldly. A place where science becomes poetry. A place where the forest itself seems to breathe with us. I imagine myself walking into the forest at dusk. The light is golden but fading. The air smells faintly of pine and earth. My steps sink softly into a carpet of needles and moss. Every sound is gentler here. A bird shifting in the branches. The sigh of wind sliding past trunks. It feels as though the forest has been waiting for me to arrive. As though I'm stepping into a vast living room where every tree is a quiet guest at the table. When I touch the bark of an old oak, my palm rests against centuries of time. I feel its rough surface. Warm from the day, yet already cooling in the twilight. I think of how many seasons it has stood through, how many storms it has endured, and still it reaches upward. Still it shares its space with younger trees around it. Beneath me, an entire world stretches in silence, a network of roots threading through the soil. They touch and overlap. They meet in the dark where no sunlight reaches. Down their trees exchange their sleepy signals. Slow chemical whispers drifting from one root to another. It reminds me of how people pass notes in a classroom. Quiet secret words slipping from one friend to the next. And though the notes are small together, they carry meaning. The deeper I walk into the forest, the more I feel part of its breath. My mind begins to slow. My heart falls into rhythm with the sway of branches. I remember childhood nights when I pressed my ear to the ground, imagining the earth had a heartbeat. Maybe I wasn't wrong. Scientists call it the wood wide web, a hidden network beneath the soil. Fungi connect trees through fine threads thinner than a strand of hair. Through these threads, trees send sugars, water, and even warning signals. When one tree feels thirsty, it can be helped by another. When insects attack a branch, the tree releases chemicals not just above, but below, sending a message underground so neighbors can prepare. It's a slow language, but it's a real one. A language written in molecules and time. I think of it as a soft Morse code pulsing through roots. Not in dots and dashes, but in subtle flows. A tree doesn't shout. It hums. It murmurs. Its signals are more like sighs than sentences. But if you give them enough years, if you stretch your imagination wide enough, you can almost hear it. Almost feel the way forests talk beneath your feet. When I picture this network, I see it as veins of light threading through soil. Each glowing strand connecting one trunk to another. Like constellations flipped upside down. Stars beneath the earth instead of above. The ground becomes a sky of its own, filled with signals too slow for our hurried eyes to see. And yet they are there. Always there. Every step you take in the woods, you're crossing over conversations that began long before you were born and will continue long after you've left. What fascinates me is the generosity of it all. The way big old trees often send resources to younger saplings. almost like parents tucking children into bed. A tree shaded beneath a dense canopy might not get enough light. On its own, it could wither. But through the underground threads, it receives carbon from older neighbors. As if the elders are saying, "Here, take some of my breath until you're strong enough to stand tall." This quiet giving feels so human. It reminds me of moments when someone lent me strength in silence. A hand on my shoulder, a cup of tea on a hard day, small signals that say you're not alone. Trees do this too. Their lullabies are carried in sugars, not words, but the meaning is the same. I walk further into my imagined forest and think of how slow time is for trees. Their days stretch over centuries. Their conversations last decades. Imagine writing a letter that your neighbor wouldn't finish reading until 50 years later. That's the kind of patience trees live with. That's the kind of stillness they embody. No wonder they feel calming to us. They invite us into their tempo. A rhythm slower than thought. A rhythm that feels like rest. Sometimes I sit beneath a tree and wonder what it knows. Not in the way we think of knowing. Not facts or names or dates. But the kind of knowing that seeps in over centuries. A knowing that comes from standing still through storms. From listening to the rain year after year. From keeping company with countless seasons. Trees carry that kind of knowledge in their rings. Each line beneath the bark is a memory. A record of growth and hardship. Some rings are thick from years of abundance. Others are thin from drought or shadow. If you could read them like pages, you'd find entire stories etched into wood. Not in words, but in the width of circles. A diary written in silence. And these stories are not kept private. When roots meet underground, when fungi weave their threads between them, those memories travel too. A tree that endured a harsh summer might share signals with its neighbors, preparing them for what may come. It's as if experience itself is passed along through the soil. Not just food and water, but wisdom. I picture the forest floor like a library. Not with shelves and books, but with roots and threads. Each root a scroll of time. Each fungal strand a whispering courier. The library has no walls and no roof, yet it holds more memory than any human archive could. And when I sit quietly in the forest, I feel as though I'm standing between those endless shelves, surrounded by stories too slow to be rushed. What amazes me most is that these signals are not selfish. A tree could keep its strength to itself, but more often it shares. The strong lend to the weak. The tall shelter the small. The old send food to the young. It's not competition, but communion. A patient generosity humming beneath the soil. There are mother trees. That's what some scientists call them. Massive elders whose roots spread wide and deep. They connect to dozens, even hundreds of younger trees. They feed them, guide them, warn them of dangers. They're like anchors in the forest, pillars of memory and support. When a mother tree is cut down, the network suffers. It's as though an entire neighborhood lost its heartbeat. When I think about this, I feel a kind of kinship. I think of grandparents who shared stories at the dinner table. Their words traveling into me like nutrients. Their lessons about patience, kindness, resilience. Not heavy lectures. Just quiet sentences that stayed with me. Trees do the same with their young. They send gifts not in sentences, but in carbon. A living inheritance passed through soil. And yet this giving is not perfect. Sometimes signals are blocked. Sometimes one tree takes more than it gives. Forests are not utopias. But even in their imperfections, there's balance. The network flexes and shifts. Over time, generosity tends to flow more than greed. Harmony outweighs discord. I imagine this balance as a slow dance. The trees moving so gradually you can't see it. Yet the dance is always happening. A step of giving here, a turn of receiving there. The fungi weaving between them like dancers with silver ribbons. If I close my eyes, I can almost hear the music of it. A deep bass hum rising from the soil. A lullaby too low for human ears. What does it mean to be part of such a network? For trees, it's survival. For me, it feels like a reminder that even in silence, connections matter. That we are never truly separate. Our signals may not travel through roots, but through glances, through gestures, through words offered at the right time. And maybe we too are stronger when we share. As night deepens in the forest, I picture the signals glowing brighter beneath the ground. Threads of light crossing in all directions. A galaxy just underfoot. Each pulse a small act of care. Each flicker a message of endurance. Above me the stars shimmer. Below me the roots shimmer too. And in between I breathe a little slower, feeling held between two skies. Sometimes I stay very still in the forest and wonder if the trees notice me. Not in the way people notice each other. Not with eyes or glances. But in some slower, deeper way. Maybe the pressure of my footsteps sinks into the soil. Maybe my breath joins the air they pull into their leaves. Maybe just by being here I've entered their circle of signals. The thought is comforting. To be part of something so much larger, so much older. I let my fingers trace the bark of a cedar. The grooves are rough yet steady. They remind me of rivers dried into stone. Each crack is like a path carved by time. I imagine the tree feeling my touch not through nerves, but through the gentle shift of pressure traveling down into its roots. Perhaps that too is a signal. A reminder that another life brushed against it today. Underground the fungi stretch like delicate lace. Their threads reach out to roots the way fingertips reach for hands. When they connect, they form bridges. Some of these threads are so fine that dozens could rest across a single human hair. And yet together they can stretch for miles. A hidden web more intricate than the stars above us. What travels through these threads is not just food. It is also warning. A tree under attack by insects releases chemicals. These drift through the air, but they also seep underground. The message spreads. Prepare your defenses. Grow tougher leaves. Release your scents to ward off the pests. The neighbors respond. It is not panic. It is preparedness. A quiet resilience spreading tree to tree. I like to imagine these warnings as lullabies in a minor key. Slow notes sung through soil. Not frightening. Not frantic. Just steady reminders. Be ready, be strong. There's beauty in how subtle it all is. Trees do not scream when they are hurt. They whisper. They signal with patience. They trust that time will carry their message. When I lie back on the moss and stare at the canopy, I think of how much of life depends on what we cannot see. I see the trunks and the branches. I see the flutter of leaves catching light. But the real story hums beneath the ground. Entire conversations happen there without sound. It makes me wonder how many quiet connections exist in our own lives that we never notice. How many times someone has sent me a signal not in words, but in silence. A soft glance. A gentle pause. A presence that said I care. The deeper I breathe in the forest, the more I feel those invisible threads around me. Not just in the soil, but in the air. In the way moisture rises from leaves and falls again as mist. In the way oxygen flows from tree to lungs to body. In the way my exhale drifts back toward their waiting branches. Even the act of breathing feels like a kind of signal. A conversation slower and older than language. There is humility in knowing that trees do this constantly. They breathe out what we need. We breathe out what they need. A loop so seamless it feels like a prayer. And then there are the mother trees. The great elders standing tall while sending their care below. I imagine their roots stretching outward like arms, gathering their younger ones close, feeding them when they cannot yet feed themselves, holding them in an embrace of soil. I've read that even when a mother tree is dying, it sometimes releases its final sugars into the network. A last gift to the forest. A farewell written not in words, but in nourishment. I find that thought both tender and profound. The idea that even at the end, trees are still giving, still shaping the future of the forest beyond their own lives. It reminds me of my grandmother, who once told me that everything you give stays alive in someone else. At the time I thought she meant advice or stories, but now I see she may have meant more. Energy itself. The simple act of sharing warmth, kindness, time. All of it travels on, just as the sugars of an old tree travel into the roots of a sapling. The forest teaches without speaking. Its lessons are etched in silence. As night deepens, I imagine the signals glowing brighter under the ground. I see them as soft lanterns moving from one tree to another. Threads carrying not just resources, but reassurance. Each lantern is a note in a song, a chorus sung too slowly for us to hear. And yet, if I close my eyes long enough, if I slow myself down enough, I feel as though I'm part of that chorus. Not separate, but woven in. Above me, stars glimmer in their vast network. Below me, roots shimmer in theirs. Two skies mirroring each other. I lie between them, breathing softly, caught in the middle of a conversation billions of years old. There's a moment in every forest walk when science fades into feeling. When roots and signals stop being data points in my mind and instead become something closer to memory. It happens quietly. Maybe in the way moonlight falls across the bark. Maybe in the hush between crickets. Suddenly, I'm not just learning about trees. I'm remembering them. I think of a childhood afternoon when I lay on the grass beneath a maple tree. The leaves moved slowly above me. Shadows flickered across my face. I felt small but safe, protected by branches that had no idea I was there yet somehow made room for me all the same. At that age, I didn't know about networks or fungal threads. But I sensed something. That the tree was more than just wood. That it was alive in ways I couldn't put into words. Now when I hear about the wood wide web, I think of that maple. I wonder what signals it sent while I rested in its shade. Was it giving sugar to a smaller sapling nearby? Was it whispering warnings of drought to its neighbors? Was it part of an unseen conversation I could never have understood? The thought fills me with awe, but also with comfort. Because if a tree can be part of something larger than itself, maybe I can too. Maybe we all are. There's something deeply human about this longing. The desire to belong to a network we can't always see. To feel that our signals matter. That our presence ripples outward even when we don't speak. I think of the people I've loved who are no longer here. Parents, grandparents, friends. I can't hear their voices anymore, yet I feel their signals inside me. The lessons they gave. The warmth they shared. The way they shaped my path without needing to say much. It's not so different from what trees do. Their nutrients still move through me like sugars through roots. Their care still lingers. Sometimes when I sit alone in the forest, I let myself imagine that every rustle of leaves is one of those voices. A reminder that connections don't end just because we can't see them. They change form. They move underground. They travel quietly, but they don't vanish. This is what the science of trees awakens in me. Not just wonder at fungi and roots, but gratitude for the invisible bonds in my own life. Bonds that carried me through years when I couldn't stand tall on my own. It's humbling too. Trees remind me that giving doesn't always need recognition. The old oak doesn't ask the sapling for thanks. It simply shares what it can, patiently, silently, in its own time. I think of the countless quiet gestures in my life that I only noticed later. A teacher who stayed after class to explain something again. A neighbor who left food at the door. A stranger who held the elevator. These were sleepy signals too. Gentle gifts sent without demand. And so the forest becomes a mirror. Every thread beneath my feet is an echo of the threads in my heart. Every glowing pulse of carbon is a memory of kindness moving through me. As I walk deeper into this thought, I realize how much forests and people share. We both thrive in networks. We both need connection to survive. We both leave behind traces that nourish others even after we're gone. The air cools as I picture this. The trees sway as though agreeing. Their branches bend like arms stretching outward. Above me, the sky is soft with stars. Around me, the forest hums with unseen signals. Within me, memories rise like lanterns. Together they blend until I no longer feel separate from any of it. And in that blending, something shifts. I don't just think about science anymore. I feel part of it. I feel my body as one more root in the network. My breath as one more note in the chorus. My heartbeat as one more pulse in the long, slow song of life. It's here in this emotional turning point that the forest doesn't feel like an idea. It feels like family. Patient, generous, quietly alive. And I let that feeling cradle me like a lullaby. There's a special kind of silence that only happens in a forest at night. It's not an emptiness. It's a fullness. A layered hush where every sound feels placed with intention. The chirp of one cricket. The slow creak of a branch swaying. The faint patter of something small moving through leaves. All of it balanced. All of it alive. In that silence, I find myself remembering not just the science of how trees share signals, but the human signals that have shaped me too. I remember sitting at my grandfather's kitchen table one winter morning. Steam curled from a chipped mug in his hand. He wasn't a man of many words. Most of the time, he just hummed softly or tapped his fingers on the wood. But every now and then he'd glance at me and smile. No explanation, no lesson, just a signal. Quiet reassurance that I was safe. That's what the forest feels like. Not loud declarations, not constant noise, just steady signals. A hum beneath the surface. Enough to let you know you belong. When scientists say that trees warn each other of drought or pests, I imagine my grandfather's smile in those signals. A small gesture with a deep meaning. A tree saying to its neighbor, "Be ready. Take care. You're not alone in this." The emotional weight of that thought lingers. Because if forests have learned to share even in hardship, then maybe that is the truest wisdom of life. That survival is never just about the individual. It's about the network. The threads of care woven quietly between us. Another memory rises. I was 10 years old walking home from school when it started to rain. My umbrella had broken that morning, so I trudged along soaked and shivering. A neighbor I barely knew pulled her car over and handed me a raincoat from the back seat. She didn't ask for it back. She didn't even ask my name. She just smiled and drove on. For years, I didn't think about her. But tonight in this forest memory, she returns to me. She was a signal too, a transfer of warmth and care. Just like carbon flowing from one root to another. The kind of giving that expects nothing. The kind of giving that keeps the whole forest alive. And maybe that's what these trees are teaching me, that our lives are not measured only by what we grow for ourselves, but by what we quietly give away. I pause here in the stillness and let that thought sink in. The forest is cool around me. A soft wind brushes my face. It smells of pine and earth. Above me, the branches are heavy with stars of their own making, leaves catching the moonlight until they glow silver. I tilt my head back and feel as though I'm lying beneath two skies at once. One made of constellations, one made of trees. And somewhere between them I find the memory of my childhood self again. The small child lying in the grass beneath the maple, listening to leaves rustle like lullabies, feeling the weight of the world soften for just a moment. That child didn't know about science. That child didn't need to. All they knew was that something in the forest made them feel held, safe, connected. And that feeling returns to me now as an adult. Full circle. It makes me wonder how many other people carry secret memories of trees. A first kiss under a willow. A childhood game played around a trunk. A quiet cry beneath branches that never judged. We all have signals like these stored in us. Invisible, subtle, and yet strong enough to guide us even years later. In that way, we're not so different from the forest. Our networks may not live in soil, but in memory. In kindnesses we didn't forget. In moments of generosity that became part of us. I breathe in and the air is cool against my throat. I breathe out and imagine the trees drawing in my carbon dioxide, folding it into their endless cycle. Even this breath is a connection. Even this small exchange is a kind of love. And slowly, without trying, the forest teaches me to soften, to let go of the sharp edges of thought, to surrender to the patient rhythm of signals passing through roots. This is the emotional turn, where science isn't just facts, it's a mirror, where the forest isn't just alive, it's family. And where every whisper in the soil feels like it's reminding me, you are part of something vast and tender. The deeper the night grows, the slower the forest seems to breathe. The sounds thin out until each one feels stretched and deliberate. A distant owl, the soft trickle of water through a hidden stream, the occasional rustle of leaves settling against each other. It all feels like a lullaby played at half speed. I let my body grow heavy against the ground. The moss cushions me. The soil beneath holds me like a bed that has waited for centuries. Around me, the trees stand tall and unshaken. They have seen storms and droughts. They have lost branches and grown them back. And still they are here, patient, steady, breathing slowly. Their signals hum quietly under the soil. No rush, no urgency, just the steady exchange of sugars and warnings. A flow of generosity. I imagine it moving like a tide beneath me, each pulse slower than a heartbeat, each signal softer than a sigh. And somehow this slowness is exactly what I need. The forest teaches me without words. It shows me that rest isn't wasted time, that even stillness can be full of meaning. Trees spend entire winters waiting, roots still humming, branches still alive. Rest is part of their survival, and maybe it's part of mine too. I breathe with them now, a long inhale, a gentle exhale, The rhythm settles in my body. Inhale, exhale. My thoughts quiet the way wind quiets at dusk. I think of the mother trees once more, their roots reaching out even as they stand silent above. A network of care beneath every step. I imagine them holding the forest together like a soft, invisible net. Even in the darkest night, the forest doesn't fall apart. It holds itself in balance. A quiet communion of life. And I feel myself as part of that communion. My weight on the moss. My breath in the air. My presence like a single note in their long, slow song. I don't need to do anything more. Just being here is enough. The night deepens. Stars scatter themselves more brightly across the sky. I look up and feel them flicker against my eyes. Each one a distant signal of light traveling across unimaginable time to reach me here. Above me the stars. Below me the roots. Two networks mirroring one another. And between them I float. Safe. Carried. There's a peace in knowing that signals don't rush. That trees take years to share their stories. That stars take centuries to send their light. Everything meaningful moves slowly. And maybe I can too. I let my shoulders loosen. My breath slows again. The sounds of the forest fade into a soft blur. No single noise stands out. It all becomes one hum. A cradle of sound. A blanket of night. The science becomes softer now. Not facts, but feelings. The fungi threads beneath me are no longer diagrams in my mind. They are lullabies stretching across the soil. The carbon flowing through roots is not chemistry. It is kindness in motion. And every signal is a reminder that life continues in quiet ways we rarely see. As I close my eyes, I imagine myself as a sapling. Small, fragile, growing in the shadow of giants. I imagine the roots of elders sending strength toward me, feeding me, guiding me, not with noise or demands, just with presence, just with quiet giving. And in that imagining, I feel safe, protected, loved. The forest has become a dream around me. The trees are guardians. The air is a blanket. The stars are lanterns. And the sleepy signals hum like distant songs, carrying me deeper into rest. I don't need to chase thoughts anymore. I don't need to solve or plan. I only need to listen. To let the rhythm of roots and stars guide me into stillness. The night is long and gentle, and I am held. The deeper I settle into this forest night, the more I notice how time itself begins to soften. Minutes stretch like shadows. Seconds dissolve like mist. Out here, clocks don't matter. The trees keep time in their own way. By the opening of buds. By the slow widening of rings. By the steady pulse of roots exchanging signals beneath the soil. It's a rhythm I can almost feel in my chest. A slow heartbeat not my own. Larger. Older. The pulse of the forest. The ground beneath me is cool but welcoming. The moss is springy yet soft, like resting on memory foam woven by nature. I press my hand into it and feel the faint dampness rise against my skin. That moisture is part of the network too. Water passing from soil to root to trunk to leaf to sky. Always moving. Always cycling. Yet never hurried. I close my eyes and the sounds of the forest rearrange themselves. The distant stream becomes a lullaby. The breeze becomes a steady hush. Even the tiny snap of a twig becomes part of a gentle rhythm. It's as though the forest is playing a slow song designed for rest. In this stillness, I remember that trees don't sleep in the way we do. They enter their own quiet state at night. Their leaves droop ever so slightly. Their energy slows. Their signals soften. They breathe a little less. They wait, resting in a way that feels patient and eternal. And being here among them, I feel invited to do the same. My body begins to mirror theirs. My shoulders loosen like branches releasing the day's tension. My chest rises and falls in slower arcs. Even my thoughts seem to sway instead of race, like leaves rocking gently on a branch. There's comfort in this alignment, in knowing that while I rest, the forest rests with me. That while I breathe slower, the trees do too. That while I let go of the day, the forest lets go as well. I think again of the signals beneath me, the wood-wide web humming through the soil, threads of fungi connecting root to root, a mother tree feeding a sapling, a neighbor tree warning of insects, sugars flowing, messages drifting. It's all still happening while I lie here. The network doesn't pause because I've closed my eyes. It continues in its slow, patient way. And that thought makes me feel safe. Because even in darkness, even in silence, life carries on with quiet care. I let that realization cradle me. I imagine the signals glowing softly beneath me like strands of golden thread, each one pulsing slowly, each one carrying a message of endurance. I imagine those threads reaching upward, wrapping gently around me like a blanket. Not tight, just enough to remind me I belong. The stars above grow brighter as the night deepens. They feel like distant companions, each one a flicker of light that began its journey long before I was born, traveling through centuries of space just to arrive here in this moment, to shine above me as I rest beneath these trees. There's something calming about that scale, knowing that light can travel for so long, that trees can share for so many centuries, that signals can move in ways we can't see but still trust. It makes my own worries feel lighter, my own pace feel softer, my own place in the world feel steadier. I breathe in. The air tastes faintly of pine and damp earth. I breathe out. The forest accepts my breath and folds it into its rhythm. I am part of this cycle now, part of this quiet song. I think of myself as a sapling again, small and delicate in the shadow of giants. And I imagine the network feeding me while I sleep. Strength flowing into me, not because I asked, not because I earned it, but because that is what forests do. They share. They care. They give quietly so the whole may thrive. The thought is tender enough to bring a faint ache to my chest. A soft ache. The kind that comes when you realize you are safe. When you realize you are not alone. Slowly I let my mind drift further. The edges of thought blur. Images replace words. A forest glowing beneath the soil. A sky glowing above it, and me resting quietly in between. Every sound has become softer now. The owl in the distance calls less often. The stream has quieted into a background murmur. Even the air feels heavier with night, as though it too is falling asleep. I feel my body sinking deeper into the earth's embrace. The moss cradling my shape. The soil beneath supporting me like strong, unseen arms. I imagine roots curling gently around me, not to bind me, but to hold me. To remind me that I am safe here, that I can let go. And I do. Slowly, gently, I let go. The forest doesn't demand my attention anymore. It just surrounds me. It hums quietly in my bones. Its signals move at their own pace. They will go on long after I've drifted into dreams. And that is enough. The forest has grown so quiet now that even silence has a texture. It feels thick and soft, like a blanket drawn over the night. My breath has slowed to match it. Each inhale rising like mist. Each exhale falling like leaves. The signals beneath the ground continue their patient work. Roots sharing sugars. Fungi carrying whispers. Trees sending their long, slow messages through soil. But I don't need to follow them anymore. I don't need to understand or imagine where they go. I only need to know that they're there. Always humming, always flowing, always steady. Above me the stars shimmer, patient as the roots. Both networks glowing in their own time. One beneath the soil, one across the sky. And between them I rest, held gently in the middle. The trees are not in a hurry. The stars are not in a hurry. The forest is never in a hurry. And now neither am I. I feel my thoughts loosening, untying themselves like knots in string. Worries slip away as if the soil is drawing them downward, carrying them off into the deep earth where they can rest too. Nothing I carried from the day needs to follow me here. What remains is only calm, only stillness. I imagine the forest breathing for me now, its roots inhaling, its branches exhaling. I simply drift in between, carried on its rhythm. I don't need to try. I don't need to hold on. The forest is enough. The trees around me stand like guardians. The moss cradles me. The air strokes my face with a cool and steady hand. And the sleepy signals murmur beneath the soil, their lullaby older than words. You are safe here. You belong here. You can rest now. The messages repeat in my mind until they blur into the rhythm of breath. I let my body grow heavy, each limb sinking further into the moss, each muscle letting go. My eyes grow soft, lids lowering like petals closing at dusk. Even my thoughts grow drowsy, drifting like feathers in the dark. The forest holds me. The night covers me. The sleepy signals surround me. And I drift. Deeper. Softer. Quieter. The trees keep watch. The stars keep shining. The roots keep whispering. And I sleep.